Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number, actually, I'm not going to tell you. You'll know by the time you listen to this. But Meredith and I are traveling. I'm not sure if we're going to get in her typical weekly update with her contest prep. So I may need to use this podcast a day early or a day late. So I'm going to skip numbering it for me, but it'll have a number by the time you listen to it. The topic is training, and the title is The Perfectionist Game in Powerlifting. This is exciting to me. I love these kind of topics because they're nuanced and they have to do with like the theory of programming, which is fun. The perfectionist game comes to kind of hints at our idea with powerlifting programming is you want to be lifting the heaviest thing you can possibly lift with the best technique, but if you do that, you're going to then wonder if you could have done a little more weight. So, if you squat 500 pounds and you actually are able to get it to count and it looks good, you're going to then wonder, could I have done 505? Then if you tried 505 and it went to crap and you didn't get it, you're like, dang it, I should have just done 500. So it's always this game of, am I selecting the right weight, the right intensity, the right technique quality? And even when you get it right, you're going to wonder if you could have gotten it right-er. This is true in programming as well. And what I want to talk about in today's podcast is the fact that proper programming for powerlifting, and actually for all goals, it's this balance of things feeling good. So you're able to, crush all your lifts and everything feels good and clean. But if everything feels good and clean and you crush everything, is the body really being forced to make positive adaptations? If your current body can do everything well, why would it need to be better, right? Our body only makes progressions when it feels they're necessary. So what is the right type of pressure that we put on our body to make the adaptations we want feel necessary, but not have the pressure be so much that we get hurt or we burn out or it's just demanding too much and the body can't keep up? That is the perfectionist game when it comes to powerlifting. I want to give a specific example for this concept, and then we can kind of talk through that. One of my clients is a powerlifter, and we've been going through a process after his last competition. We had him kind of heal up for a cycle. My programs are 4 weeks. I believe in 4-week programs. So whenever I talk about a program or a cycle, I'm talking about 4 weeks. So we had him heal up for 4 weeks. Then we did 8 weeks of non-competition specific, kind of really pushing the body, and in a sense we're going to be kind of like burying the body because we're starting to create that pressure. We want to create that pressure for the body to adapt. Then we spent 8 weeks kind of transitioning from that into more actualization of the work, the strength work. So we want to beat his body up enough to elicit a change from the body and then slowly start to release that pressure so the body can make those changes, and then we can see the fruition of those changes. So that's kind of the life cycle of a program, is you drive the body into fatigue. Once it starts to respond, you pull back enough to let that response fully happen. For this client, we're in that process, and he's in this stage where he's just feeling kind of beat up and feeling crappy. And I wanted to make this podcast as a way to encourage him that that's okay, it's normal, this is fine, and kind of explain why that's the case, why it's normal, why it's fine. And then everybody else gets to hear that as well, and hopefully you can remain confident in your approach, in your work, in your program, even when you have stages of everything feeling super rough. So the first 8 weeks of pushing our body into fatigue, we did non-competition specific work, which means that the squat, bench, and deadlift were variations using specialty bars or weird positions where we isolated a known weakness. So in squats, if somebody has weak quadriceps and they kind of excessively hinge in their squat, we might do high bar squats, we might do safety squat bar. You could even do front squats, but front squats aren't as heavy loading as a safety squat bar would be. And for some people, or as much as a high bar squat would be. So really in programming, you're also picking between the loading intensities. Do I want a underloaded variation? Do I want a kind of overloaded variation? Do I want a normal loading? So when you're pushing the body into fatigue, you might start with a normal load, push into an overload, and then when you're going to pull back and let the body recover, you might pull back into an underload. So if we think of those three variations, typically a safety squat bar is going to allow you to, this isn't always the case. There are going to be individual differences. Safety squat bar squats tend to beat the body up more than a high bar squat does, and more than a front squat does, because a front squat has to be so underloaded. So safety squat bar, for most people, you're not going to be able to do that lift as heavy as you would do a normal squat. However, without the external rotation of the shoulders, the hands up on the bar, the safety squat bar high position, plus the thoracic kind of vulnerability without the external rotation of the shoulders with the hands on the bar, that's going to beat up people really bad. So you might use that one to really push the body into fatigue. Then maybe you pull back into high bar squats to still let the weight load be heavy, but let some of that thoracic fatigue reduce, and then keep the pressure on the legs to keep adaptation. Then, as you want the body to actually recover and adapt, if you've pushed your body into full fatigue, you might switch over to front squats, especially with a non-rotating bar like a Duffalo bar or a camber bar. That would be a great way to still push a lot of workload, but it's not going to be as intense because the weight load is a lot lighter, and that can let the body actually actualize the work that you were doing with the safety squat bar, that you were able to get some adaptation and progression during the high bar squats, and now that you've lessened the weight load to front squats, you're going to get way more of the actualization from all that safety squat bar work. So you're going to get stronger during the cycle with the front squats. So after that cycle, you can go back to competition squats and you're going to be smoking PRs. But it's from the work that you did in the safety squat bar that was actualized during the front squats that you got to actually use and have fun with in the regular squats. So this type of programming cycles are necessary with loading intensities, let alone just overall volume and workload intensity of the program in its entirety. So we spent 8 weeks doing that stuff, where maybe the squats were safety squat bar, bench might have been Spoto presses, maybe deadlifts were paused isometrics off the floor or eggshell deadlifts. You would just do a variation of the main lifts. Then the accessories were super high volume bodybuilding stuff with pre-exhaust. You're just really looking for muscle damage, trying to really push the muscles as far as the body will let you push them. So we did that for 8 weeks. Now for 12 weeks, the past 12 weeks, so this has been 20 weeks. The past 12 weeks, we switched back to competition specific lifts. So the regular competition squat, competition bench, competition deadlift, and we're doing sets of around 4 to 5 sets of 2 to 4 reps per set. Pretty hard work. Nothing is like a 10 RPE where the technique is trash or they're missing the lift. But it's really freaking hard for 4 to 5 sets. And the accessory work is still high volume bodybuilding work, but we dropped the pre-exhaust. And what I like to do is to use intensifiers, like intensity techniques such as pre-exhaust, cluster sets, rest, pause, drop sets, to push the intensity of the accessory work. And then when we want to start to have more actualization, more recovery and adaptation in the body, instead of dropping the volume of the accessories, which can then overexpose and cause undertraining of the connective tissues, you would want to just drop the intensifiers. You still keep the volume really high. So that's what we've done with the accessories, is we kept the volume in the bodybuilding work, but we dropped the intensifiers, the pre-exhaust work. What happened during these past 12 weeks? The first 4 weeks, when we switched to the main lifts, everything felt great, smoking the weights, everything was moving really well. The second 4 weeks, he was able to hit a PR on one of the main lifts, and the other 2 lifts, he was hitting near PRs with super clean, efficient technique. So it was like he was matching his old strength levels, but even while hitting all of the accessory work. Then, since that went really well, we pushed for another 4 weeks, where we tried to say, okay, can you match that new PR in 4 weeks? Can you match the same efficiency that you're moving old PRs in 4 weeks? Can we push the body another 4 weeks into fatigue? What started to happen by week 4 was the body started getting pretty grumpy. The lifts were starting to get kind of slower, sluggish. He was feeling more fatigued. You're starting to get into like some, sleep is starting to get a little off. Food is off. Like maybe they're getting extra hungry. Maybe they're not hungry at all. You're starting to get too fatigued. Now, when you get to that stage, you might think to yourself, well, what happened? What did I do wrong? The answer is you did nothing wrong. That's exactly what the hell is supposed to happen. That is 100% what's supposed to happen. You have to bury the body to get it to adapt. And then once it starts to adapt, you pull back. His body was doing great at the 8-week mark of the past 12 weeks, where he hit the brand new PR in the main lift and he was smoking his old lifts. If we would have just walked away from that and lightened the intensity and kind of gave him more of a recovery phase, what would we have really accomplished? Did we really eke out everything that the body could have done? This is like if you give a kid homework and you're like, okay, I want them to learn math. I'm going to give them 4 homework problems. Well, if they're just like typical, multiplication, division, 4 gives them a little bit of work, but it's not challenging enough to really teach, right? Like, yeah, there was something, but it wasn't super freaking difficult that it really pushed new learning. It was like, yeah, that was kind of annoying. I got to practice 1 or 2 things, but overall, I'm kind of the same. Well, we don't want to go through programming and be the same. We want to go through the programming and be freaking way better. So you want to give a homework that's really challenging. It's doable, but it's really freaking challenging. And that's the stage we're at now. He's going through the homework, now he's got a headache. So he's like, okay, I've done enough problems. I got the idea, but I'm starting to feel burned out. Perfect. Now we pull back. But that's what we want. Before we pushed, they were able to hit their old PRs, right? But they were able to hit the old PRs with still really high accessory work. Before, they would only hit those old PRs if their accessories were dropped off and they had peaked for a meet. So clearly we've made some progress. That stage is essential because we're pushing the body into fatigue. We're pushing the body to have to perform to its max. And then we're saying, hey, can your max be any better? And that's the driver. That's what we're really looking for. Can my best be better? And whenever your body says, yeah, okay, stop. I'm done. This is the most I can do. You say, okay. And then you start backing off. So you start to drop the accessories, which gives more recovery and adaptation capacity towards the main lifts. The main lifts start to then feel fast and efficient again. You start to feel better for training. You feel like sleep is better. Food is getting better. Then all of a sudden, bam, you get new PR. Bam, new PR. Bam, new PR. Powerlifting programming requires these stages where things feel smooth and efficient, but also stages where things feel super hard and fatigued. In the fatigued and super hard stage, you shouldn't have significant joint pain, but there might be a little bit of aches and pains. You shouldn't have significant sleep problems, but maybe you're going to start to have, I fall asleep, but then I wake up in the middle of the night, or I have a hard time falling asleep. You shouldn't have extreme hunger loss or extreme hunger gain where you can't stick to your diet. You maybe have a little bit of challenge sticking to your diet, but you should be able to stick to your diet. If the joint pain becomes too much, if the sleep problems become too much, if the hunger becomes too much, then we've buried too deep. So you should feel a little sleepy. Hunger might be a little off. The body might feel a little lethargic, a little achy, but overall you can still have good and great workouts. The reason why you want these seasons, the season where everything looks good and feels good, but then the season where everything kind of sucks, but is doable, is because you're pushing your body to adapt. And then you're giving it time to make those adaptations. The push phase is when you feel beat up and tired. The adaptation phase is when things start to feel smooth and efficient again. Great progress in powerlifting happens in these stages. You want to feel fresh and awesome for a powerlifting meet, absolutely, right? But between the powerlifting meets, you shouldn't feel that fresh and you shouldn't feel that awesome. You should feel like you're putting in a really hard amount of work. And it's really freaking hard. If you don't push into that fatigue and everything kind of feels okay, well, you might make some small PRs due to technique refinement, and maybe you're going to make some physical development, but you're not maximizing the physical development. However, after a powerlifting meet, once you've properly recovered, if you do push your body into the fatigued state where you start to get on the edge of joint, sleep, and food problems, that's actually good. Like, that's where the seeds of strength are planted. You're pushing your body to a point where it's so damn uncomfortable that it has to respond by getting stronger. And when it starts to get that uncomfortable, that's when you start to pull back, and that's when you start to get that response, because the body can then nurture the seeds that you've planted. The body has space in recovery and adaptation capacity, so it can start to make the changes you want and start to fulfill all the work that you've been putting in. So that's usually when you want to start peaking for a meet or peaking for some heavy testing maxes and training. So proper powerlifting programming has these stages to them. It has stages where you feel good and things will be cruising, but it has stages where things kind of feel like crap and they're super freaking hard. You need to have both of those stages in your programming for you to maximize your adaptations and what you're truly capable of. The good times are fun, yes, but it's the tough times when you're putting in the work that allows you to have the next good time. If you want your good times to be gooder, if you want your peaks to be peaker, if you want to get new strength, you have to push. You have to go through tough times. And that's true, like I said, for powerlifting, bodybuilding, body recomposition training, all the categories of clients I work with. There are times you get to see the fun of your work, but there are also times when you have to work. You have to put in the work that sucks. You have to do the stuff that you don't want to do. You have to feel beat up. You have to feel tired. You have to feel on the edge of burned out. Things have to suck. We want the suck to be safe, but it has to suck a bit. So I thought this would be helpful to share for any of my clients who are going through these sucky, tough stages at the moment, to help you understand that that's part of the process. Don't lose confidence. But I also think it's helpful for everyone. If you want to achieve new levels of success, you will have to put in sucky, miserable, fatiguing work, and you have to do that first. Then you get to pull back and see the culmination of the work. You get to have the fun, right? Everybody thinks playing the guitar would be cool, but nobody wants to take the time to learn how to play, right? Everybody wants to be strong, but who the hell wants to go into the gym and grind for weeks, months, years on end before you see that strength? Everybody wants their social media highlight without putting in the work first that no one can see. That is the perfectionist game in powerlifting. You want to push to as miserable as you can be while being safe, and then pull back so you can peak as high as possible to get the best strength. How miserable is miserable enough? That's the fun game. Just like we said, if you squat 500 pounds, you're going to wonder if you can do 505. If you tried 505 and you missed it, you've been so mad you didn't just do 500, right? That's the perfectionist game. How hard can I push? What's the most amount of push? What's the right amount of push? It's a little variable. Everybody has different seasons of life. Everybody has different stressors outside of the gym. Exactly what is best per time you try is different every single time. But that is the process you're going through. I need to push my body to be uncomfortable so my body feels the need to change. And then I want to give my body space to make that change. And then I get to see the fun of that change. So you have to plant the seeds before you can reap the rewards. Awesome. So I thought that was helpful. I thought that was fun. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email on our website, www.brutalirongym.com. We have a contact us page. Send me any questions. Send me any comments. I love to hear from everybody. So thank you if you do reach out. I enjoy hearing from people and hearing your thoughts. If you like the podcast, please share the podcast. The more people we share it with, the more people we can help. If you like the podcast, please consider donating to support the podcast, which you can do on our website. Also, if you like the information we share in the podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us and follow us on Instagram and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.